Oi, 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 YouTube, good to see you. Welcome back to another video. I hope you've had your water and unclenched your jaw. In partnership with Dead by Daylight, we have come up with a very basic beginner's guide to Dead by Daylight. So whether you're new to the game or you've been on extended hiatus, we plan on walking you through the basics, all right? Now, we're not going to be discussing big gigabrain strats or the best, most optimized way to do things. We'll reserve the more complex, nuanced stuff for future videos. Dead by Daylight is a 4 versus 1 multiplayer experience. 4 survivors are locked in a trial with 1 killer as they desperately attempt to repair 5 of 7 total generators so that they may power the exit gates and escape the trial. According to the lore, the entity, an ancient being, has abducted various individuals from their world and brought them to this realm to be survivors. Killers with tragic, villainous, or evil pasts have also been summoned to do the entity's bidding. Why, you may ask? Because the entity feeds off of their emotions, specifically the emotions of the survivors, the hope of escaping, the fear of being found and chased, and the fear of pain and death, which leads to the killer objective. The killer is to find, wound, down, and even hook survivors. Each survivor can undergo, at maximum, being hooked 3 times before they are sacrificed to the entity, where they will be re-entered into another trial in the entity's purgatory. This is the absolute overview of a match. So, let's dive into a bit more nuance. Here is your HUD, or your heads-up display, as a survivor. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see you and your fellow survivors. You'll see the amount of generators left to complete underneath the character portraits, and below that, you'll see any items that you may or may not have equipped or found in the trial, as well as their add-ons. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see any perks that you have brought into the trial with you to aid in your escape. Above this, you'll see the status notifications if you're afflicted with any status effects or hex perks. And in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see the points you accrue for various actions, as well as what specific killer hex perks you're afflicted with, if any. Now, the killer HUD is mostly the same. On the left, showing all survivors in the trial and their status. Below that is the gens remaining in the trial, but below that is the killer ability and add-ons. If a killer ability requires charging or anything of that nature, you'll see that indicated front and center in the bottom. Now, on to basic gameplay. Survivors can crouch walk, and they can sprint. Crouching is the slowest of these options, but it is the most quiet. Note that it isn't often completely silent, especially in tall grass or corn. Sprinting will leave a trail of red-orange crosshatch marks behind you, typically invisible to survivors, but visible to killers. These are called scratch marks and aid the killer in finding and tracking you over distance. Scratch marks are not permanent and do dissolve after 10 seconds. They slowly will fade out, and obviously the ones closest to you will be brightest, so no need to crouch walk everywhere. If a killer is preoccupied elsewhere, they probably won't see you if you need to be somewhere, move, get to a generator, etc. It is worth noting that scratch marks climb up the sides of trees, walls, etc. as well, making you more visible to a killer at a great distance if they're looking to find somebody. Now, as we mentioned previously, survivors are supposed to find and complete 5 of 7 generators on the map. 7 total generators will spawn across the map. As you navigate the map, you can spot generators via this tall lamppost affixed to the top. Generally, generators are dispersed evenly around the map with 1 or 2 in the middle of said map. As you work on a generator, you will see the pistons start to fire. These pistons directly correspond to how complete a generator is, each fully firing piston representing roughly 25% progress. Now, as you work on a generator, you will see this symbol, or what is known as skill checks. Skill checks randomly appear, forecasted very slightly by this sound. You have to hit your assigned button, depending on your platform of play, when the line tracing the circle is within the designated bar. Failing a skill check will cause the generator to backfire, regressing some of the progress that you have worked so hard for, and also alerting the killer of your location. This is what that looks like from the survivor and the killer perspective. When it comes to generators, the killer can see the aura of all of the generators highlighted in a red around the map, and they can hear generators being repaired if they're a short distance away. Killers will patrol these generators to attempt finding survivors, so do be alert. Also, keep in mind that if a killer comes across a generator with progress, they can choose to kick that generator. Now, this doesn't cause a flat decrease in progress, but it starts a process of regression that will regress the generator slowly over time, as seen by the sparks. As an aside, there are also something in DBD called totems. Totems are a secondary and sometimes necessary objective. They come in two forms: dull totems, which look like this, and active or lit totems, which look like this. The difference between dull and lit totems is the candle that is lit underneath, signaling that this totem is active. But what is a lit totem? Certain killers have equipable perks called hex perks. These perks are often so powerful that power needs to be balanced, so they're tied to a totem in a ritual. Destroying a lit totem will often remove the curse that these totems put on survivors entirely. But beware, some totems are traps intended to lure survivors into false comfort. Now, do keep in mind that if you cleanse a dull totem, the killer gets no sound notification for that, but if you cleanse a lit totem, the killer will get the visual notification like this, and everyone on the map will hear something that sort of sounds like a thunderclap as well that lingers in the air for a few seconds. Now, let's dive into being chased and chasing. Killers have an aura around them called a terror radius. This terror radius starts with a faint heartbeat and music. Sometimes this music is tailor-made for the killer. But as the killer gets closer, the heartbeat and that music will swell in volume, indicating their position to you. Killers also have what is called a red stain, usually in a cone shape on the ground in front of them. This red stain is invisible from the killer's perspective, but it is an indicator to help survivors know where the killer is coming from when they're being chased. Killers, once finding a survivor, will initiate chase. It generally takes a killer 2 hits to down a survivor. Certain killer abilities can circumvent this and can cause an immediate down. Now, if a killer hits a survivor one time, this survivor will get a short 2-second speed boost to make some distance from their aggressor. If you're a survivor being chased, try using windows and pallets to create distance between yourself and the killer. You can even stun a killer if they get hit by a pallet that you're throwing, which will give you some much needed time to escape. Now, remember that killers can't break pallets, and after they've been broken, there is no way to get them back. Survivors also, in some scenarios, can hide in lockers to avoid a killer. If entering a locker slowly, you'll do so silently. But if you're sprinting while entering a locker, the doors will swing open very loudly, causing another sound notification that the killer can follow. Beware that fast or medium vaulting windows, throwing pallets, and hopping in a locker quickly will also trigger sound notifications to a killer who is slightly out of earshot. So be paying attention. If a killer's lost you, and you inadvertently don't know this, and give away your position, that could be a huge mistake on your end. There are ways to optimize on chases, and tips on how to get better at being chased. Now, we'll link those videos here, but for now, it is important to look for pallets and windows, and just keep that in mind. With regards to finding these pallets and windows, the one thing that you do not really want to do is go to the very, very outer edge of the map where that fence is, where you can go no further. This just guarantees that you have nothing to use, and the killer can find you and down you very, very quickly and easily. As crazy as it sounds, you'll need to run closer to the middle of the map to find more obstacles to help you in chase. There's almost an inner circle that you'll want to know on most maps that'll help you get there. And if you're on an outdoor map, it is worth looking for obstacles with tall walls. You'll generally find some safe haven here. After being injured, survivors will cause grunts of pain and leave blood trails on the floor. Be careful not to make your blood trails too obvious though, and be especially careful to not try and avoid chase by simply hiding behind a rock, especially if injured. Your grunts of pain are often too loud and will give you away to a killer who's paying attention. Now, once the killer has downed you as a survivor, you can recover. You cannot completely fill this recovery meter yourself. It'll require some help from a teammate, but you can get it to about 85 to 90%. A fellow survivor would have to come help you to finish the rest of the way, unless you have perks that help you do otherwise. Without specific perks, you cannot crawl and recover at the same time, so be aware of this and work on recovering. Now, if the killer picks you up immediately, you will have the option to wiggle off of their shoulder. It takes approximately 16 seconds to wiggle free, so if a killer is lost or cannot get to a hook in time, you may be given another chance to escape. Now, once placed on a hook, you'll see this bar. This bar essentially has two halves, stage 1 and stage 2. If you get hooked once, you'll stay on stage 1 for 60 seconds. Once unhooked and hooked again, you'll enter struggle stage or stage 2. Again, this stage has 60 seconds of maximum time. If you get unhooked and rehooked again, you'll automatically be sacrificed, a maximum of 3 hooks, as we discussed earlier. All of that being said, if you stay in stage 1 for longer than 60 seconds, or for more than half of the bar, then you'll enter stage 2. And if you stay on stage 2 until your bar is empty, these stages transition into each other if not interrupted by your teammates and unhooking. Now, your fellow teammates can see all of this on their HUD. Each little scratch or tally mark you see here represents what stage you have previously been on. If there are no tally marks, you've never been hooked. If there's 1, you've been on stage 1 before. And if there's 2 tally marks, you've been on stage 2, and you will die on your next hook, all right? Now, there is some nuance to the hooking, all right? If you're in stage 1, you have the option to attempt escaping yourself, attempting to pull yourself off the meat hook. However, this can go wrong. Attempting escape has a 4% chance for success and is generally not an option that you want. Because of the way probability works, each individual attempt has a 4% chance. These attempts do not stack to 12%. You get 3 attempts at escaping before entering stage 2. Each attempt, respectively, shaves 20 seconds off of your stage timer. So, if you hang there for 5 seconds and attempt escape, you've shaved 25 seconds total off of your 60-second stage 1 timer. When in the struggle stage, you'll be met with periodic skill checks as you try to stave off the entity from taking you. These skill checks are not random and are spaced evenly. These skill checks will get harder and harder until you are dead or unhooked, and missing one will cost you some time off of your stage 2 meter. Now, if you do get lucky enough to escape your chase or to get unhooked, you can heal yourself and others. Now, you can only heal yourself if you have a med kit or certain perks. However, your teammates can heal you, and up to 2 teammates can heal you at a time. So do keep that in mind. Heal in safe places. When you are healing, you can and will be presented with skill checks, and missing a skill check will cause a sound notification for the killer to follow, and that looks a little bit like this. Now, keep in mind that the speed of your heal, how you heal, all of these things are augmented both by your perks and by killer perks and things of that nature. We will dive into that nuance in a much later video. Now that we've gone over generators, being chased, and being hooked, let's discuss the end of a match. Once all generators are finished, if they're finished, you'll see 2 exit gates glow. These gates are always obvious to the killer, but survivors need to make mental note after seeing the notifications on their screen. Only 1 exit gate needs to be open for survivors to escape. And once an exit gate is open, you'll see a bar appear at the top of your HUD. This bar signals the start of the end game collapse. The ground will start to shake and turn red as if volcanically erupting. And as the bar of the EGC counts down, these effects will grow more intense. When this bar empties, however, the entity will kill any and all survivors that remain in the trial. Generally, this takes anywhere from 2 to 4 minutes, depending on various circumstances, if somebody's hooked, if somebody's down on the ground, etc. So manage your time wisely. Alternatively, in the trial, there is another way to escape, and this is called the hatch. Hatch is fairly complicated to explain, but let me try my best here. Hatch spawns when the amount of generators completed is greater than the amount of survivors remaining in the trial. This might sound complicated, so let me break this down. If there are 3 survivors remaining in the trial, Hatch will spawn after 4 generators are completed, but it will spawn closed. If there are 2 survivors remaining in the trial, hatch will spawn after 3 generators are completed, but it will spawn closed. If there is 1 survivor remaining in the trial, the hatch will spawn and will be open regardless of generator count. Now, there are a myriad of places the hatch could spawn, but just keep in mind that they are mostly random as you're playing DBD. Now, keep in mind if the killer spots an open hatch, they can close it, and this will force the survivor remaining in the trial to attempt opening an exit gate. And those are the basics of Dead by Daylight. That is the overview of everything you need to know just to get into the game and start playing so that you understand what's happening around you. Everything we discussed here, of course, has nuance and a lot of minute strategies and things of that nature that we can delve into in future videos, and we will talk about. And there are deeply complex systems like perks, the blood web, etc. But like I said, in partnership with Dead by Daylight, this is Dead by Daylight, the beginner's guide, everything you need to know just to dive in. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll be praying to the entity to see you in some of our next videos.